These are 20 hidden facts about Jeremiah Johnson, the 1972 Western that made cinema history as the first Western ever accepted at the Cannes Film Festival, turned Robert Redford into a mountain man icon, and somehow became one of the most recognizable memes on the internet 50 years later. Growing up with this film meant absorbing those breathtaking Utah landscapes, that haunting folk score, and Redford's transformation from naive greenhorn into legendary mountain man. But the story behind the cameras holds secrets most fans have never heard. What follows covers the director who literally bet his house on this picture, the real cannibal mountain man who inspired the story, casting decisions that sparked genuine controversy, and the reason millions of people have shared a GIF from this movie without ever knowing its source. This is the untold story of Jeremiah Johnson. Robert Redford never should have played Jeremiah Johnson, and that's where our first hidden fact begins. Fact number 1. Clint Eastwood chose Dirty Harry over this role. Lee Marvin owned the project first, and when that arrangement fell apart, Warner Brothers attached Clint Eastwood with Sam Peckinpah set to direct. That version would have delivered Eastwood's stoic intensity combined with Peckinpah's brutal, violent style, creating something entirely different from what audiences eventually received. Peckinpah and Eastwood clashed badly enough that both walked away, and Eastwood took a meeting about a cop movie called Dirty Harry instead. Warner Brothers needed a new star, Redford needed a project, and he brought his friend Sidney Pollack along to direct. That decision launched one of Hollywood's most important creative partnerships. Fact number 2. Redford and Pollack's partnership began a decade earlier. War Hunt in 1962 brought these two together for the first time, marking both of their feature film debuts. Pollack trained at the neighborhood playhouse and worked as an actor himself before Burt Lancaster pushed him toward directing. And by 1969, he'd already earned an Oscar nomination for Best Director with They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Jeremiah Johnson became their second collaboration of what would eventually total 7 films together, and this particular production would test that partnership harder than anything that came before. Fact number 3. Warner Brothers wanted to shoot the entire film on a studio backlot. Those stunning mountain vistas, the endless wilderness, the snow-covered peaks that define this movie visually, all of it nearly got faked on a soundstage in Burbank. Studio executives insisted the backlot approach would save money and avoid weather delays. Redford and Pollack fought that decision and won by convincing Warner Brothers that location filming in Utah could actually match the cost of a studio production. The studio gave in reluctantly, and the result changed everything about how this film looks and feels. Fact number 4. The art director drove over 26,000 miles scouting locations. Ted Howarth covered nearly 100 filming sites across 2 states during his search for the perfect mountain wilderness. Utah provided Mount Timpanogos, Ashley National Forest, Zion National Park, Snow Canyon State Park, and the Alpine Loop through Provo and American Fork Canyons, while Arizona contributed locations on Navajo and Apache reserves. Several scenes landed on Redford's own property at Sundance. And here's the backstory on that. Redford purchased land in Provo Canyon during the early 1960s and acquired Timp Haven Ski Resort in 1969, renaming it Sundance Mountain Resort after his character from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The family cabin scenes audiences remember were shot right there on his personal land. Fact number 5. Sidney Pollack mortgaged his own home to finish the film. Weather delays pushed the production over budget, and rather than approaching the studio for more money, Pollack put up his own house as collateral to keep cameras rolling. Pollack described that decision later by saying there was no way he would let the film overrun, and that Redford proved himself a superb partner in keeping things tight. He called the experience the greatest way to learn production, because he found himself playing with his own money. Fact number 6. Snow scenes could only be shot once. Virgin snow creates a production nightmare most audiences never consider, since any footprints ruin the shot permanently, and there's no resetting the location. Pollack explained the painstaking workaround his crew developed. High in the mountains during fresh snowfall, the actor's tracks couldn't appear in frame, which meant taking a snowmobile to move the actor into position through some back route, then calling on a 2-way radio for them to emerge into the shot. 1 chance per setup, and the film flows so naturally that viewers never sense the pressure behind each take. Fact number 7. Redford found himself abandoned in the mountains during the final shot. Production had wound down to just 3 people remaining from the original 70-person crew, with only Redford, Pollack, and a helicopter pilot left on location. They needed one last aerial shot of Johnson crossing a snowy field. The helicopter dropped Redford high in the mountains and then vanished over the horizon. The pilot had returned to base for more film, but Redford didn't know that. leaving him stranded in genuine wilderness without any idea whether rescue would come. Redford later turned that fear into something else entirely, describing how he lay in the snow and absorbed what he called the soundlessness of every moment, nothing but an occasional echo over the tip of a glacier. Experiences like that one shaped his performance in ways no script could provide. Fact number 8. Will Geer, who played Bearclaw, survived the Hollywood blacklist. Bearclaw Chris Lapp needed an actor with genuine warmth and frontier authenticity, and Will Geer delivered both. His path to that role carried decades of struggle behind it. Born in 1902 in Frankfort, Indiana, Geer earned a master's degree in botany from Columbia University and toured with Woody Guthrie during the folk revival years, even introducing Guthrie to Pete Seeger. The House Un-American Activities Committee demanded testimony from him during the 1950s, but Geer refused to name names, and Hollywood blacklisted him for that choice. Survival during those years meant founding the Will Geer Theatricum Botanicum in Topanga, California in 1951, where he cultivated every plant mentioned in Shakespeare's plays while waiting for the industry to forgive him. 1972 brought redemption on two fronts. That same year, Geer landed Bearclaw. He also won the role that would define his legacy, Grandpa Walton on The Waltons, which earned him an Emmy in 19... Will Geer died on April 27, 1978, but Bearclaw remains his gift to Western cinema. Fact number 9. The actress who played Swan held no Native American heritage. Controversy still surrounds this casting decision. Della Bolton delivered a memorable performance as Swan, the flathead woman who becomes Johnson's wife, yet she was born Gloria Della Bolton in Santa Monica, California, with no indigenous ancestry. The American Indian movement had initially agreed to help production find a Native American actress, but August 1970 brought a public break when AIM charged that the film was possibly exploiting Indians and withdrew all cooperation. 3 months of casting searches followed AIM's departure, and Della Bolton beat out 200 Native American women for the role. Johnny Arley, a Flathead technical advisor from Montana, coached her in the Salish language to prepare her for the performance. Bolton won the Bronze Wrangler Award at the 1972 Western Heritage Awards and went on to run what colleagues described as a legendary kindergarten classroom before her death on June 9. Fact number 10. A future country music legend appears in an uncredited role at age 12. Tanya Tucker, who would become one of country music's biggest stars, reportedly shows up in a non-speaking part as Quallen's daughter, though some details remain unverified. The story goes that young Tucker pestered her neighbor Robert Redford until he gave her something to do on set. This appearance came before her 1972 breakthrough hit Delta Dawn, when she was just 12 or 13 years old. Fact number 11. The screenwriter received payment partly in antique weapons. John Milius wrote the screenplay after graduating from USC Film School, where he won a student film prize in 1967. His initial payment totaled just $5,000 for the first draft. Redford and Pollock didn't entirely trust him at first, as Milius later admitted they preferred their writers to be more intellectual. They kept hiring intellectual writers to rewrite his work, and they kept having to hire him back because none of those guys could write that dialogue. Final payment reached $80,000, roughly $650,000 in today's money, with part of the compensation arriving in the form of antique weapons. That arrangement fits the man who would later write Apocalypse Now and Conan the Barbarian. Milius identified this project as his breakthrough moment, saying that Jeremiah Johnson represented the real breaking point where he knew almost overnight that he had become a good writer with a voice. He understood that material because he'd lived in the mountains himself, kept a trapline, and hunted. The man who inspired this legend lived a life far stranger than anything the film depicts. Fact number 12. Jeremiah Johnson never existed, and the real man answered to John Johnston, Johnston with a T, not Johnson with an O, and he never heard the name Jeremiah during his entire life. Birth records show John Garrison entering the world near Pattenburg, New Jersey on July 1, 1824. Military service during the Mexican-American War from 1846 to 1848 ended badly when he struck a superior officer and deserted to avoid punishment. That's when he adopted the name Johnston and headed west, reaching Montana around 1862. Fact number 13. The liver-eating legend was probably performance art, not actual cannibalism. Legend holds that Crow warriors murdered Johnston's pregnant Flathead wife in 1847, sparking a 25-year vendetta during which he killed over 300 Crow warriors and consumed their livers. The Crow believed the liver was necessary for the afterlife, which made this the ultimate insult to fallen enemies. Military records researcher Dorman Nelson discovered a fatal problem with this timeline. Johnston was serving in the Navy during the years these events supposedly occurred, making the origin story impossible. A more believable explanation comes from an 1868 battle on the Musselshell River. During fighting with Sioux warriors, liver tissue stuck to Johnston's blade after a kill, and he jokingly asked his companions if anyone wanted a chaw. Johnston himself told a newspaper that he kind of made believe to take a bite, admitting the whole thing was theater. Contemporary accounts confirm he was violent and surly with extensive Indian fighting experience, but 300 kills and actual cannibalism belong to legend rather than history. Fact number 14. The real Johnston eventually made peace with the Crow and called them brothers. The endless vendetta story falls apart against this simple truth about his later years. Fact number 15. Robert Redford served as a pallbearer at the real Johnston's reburial. At the year 1900, death came to Johnston at the National Soldiers' Home in Santa Monica, California, and he was buried at the Los Angeles National Cemetery far from any mountains. 1974 brought a campaign led by 25 7th-grade students and their teacher Try Robinson to move Johnston's remains to Old Trail Town in Cody, Wyoming, proper mountain man country at last. 2,000 people attended the June 8, 1974 ceremony where Robert Redford served as one of the pallbearers. Bob Edgar, who ran Old Trail Town, ordered concrete poured over the coffin to prevent anyone from ever moving it again, and the epitaph reads simply, "No more trails." The irony runs deep. Johnston lies buried under the fictional name Jeremiah Johnson, a name he never knew in life. When workers exhumed his remains from Los Angeles, only a large leg bone and coffin fragments remained to make the journey. Fact number 16. Jeremiah Johnson became the first Western ever accepted in competition at the Cannes Film Festival. 25 years of Cannes history had passed by 1972, and the Western stood as arguably America's most iconic film genre, yet no Western had ever been deemed worthy of competition at the world's most prestigious festival. Jeremiah Johnson changed that record permanently with its May 7, 1972 premiere. Sidney Pollack earned a nomination for the Palme d'Or, losing to 2 Italian films that year, but the recognition made history regardless. December 2, 1972 brought the American premiere in Boise, Idaho, where Vardis Fisher's widow presided over the event. Fisher wrote Mountain Man, one of 2 books that inspired the screenplay, but death claimed him in 1968 before he could see his work reach the screen. Fact number 17. The film included an overture and intermission despite running under 2 hours. Sidney Pollack later admitted to having delusions of grandeur when he created an overture and intermission for a film that runs only 108 minutes. The theatrical elements were originally designed for a single 70mm print. DVD and Blu-ray releases restored these elements, which means streaming viewers may have missed them entirely. Fact number 18. The original ending killed Johnson. Redford and Pollack disagreed about the proper conclusion for their film. Pollack wanted Johnson to freeze to death in the mountains, delivering a tragic and definitive ending. Redford pushed for ambiguity instead, envisioning the character moving on through the mountains with his story continuing beyond the frame. Redford's vision won out, and the result proves impossible to improve upon. That final exchange with paints his shirt red, the raised hand of respect between former enemies, achieves perfection precisely because it refuses to provide closure. Fact number 19. The Nodding Man meme came from this film, and millions had no idea. Younger viewers might find this fact the most surprising of all. That GIF appearing everywhere on the internet, the bearded man smiling and nodding in approval, shows Robert Redford in Jeremiah Johnson. April 30, 2012 marks the first documented appearance of the meme online, but viral status arrived in July 2019, when Splinter revealed that many people sharing it believed they were looking at Zach Galifianakis rather than Redford. The scene captures a small but significant character moment when Johnson first genuinely smiles at his new family after catching a fish, representing major development for this stoic and isolated character. October 2021 brought a Family Guy recreation with Peter Griffin in the season 20 premiere, demonstrating how a 50-year-old film moment still resonates in modern comedy. Fact number 20. The Flathead technical advisor's work on this film sparked a language preservation movement. Johnny Arley from Montana did far more than coach Del Bolton in Salish during production. His corrections shaped the authenticity of every Native American scene. Chickens had to leave the native camp after Arley pointed out that his people never kept chickens because they were buffalo hunters. Demeaning scenes faced his objections and revisions. A Salish song he performed made it into the final film. What nobody expected was the lasting impact beyond cinema. Work on Jeremiah Johnson sparked Arley's dedication to Salish language preservation, and the programs he helped establish have created approximately 100 new Salish speakers today. A Hollywood Western helping preserve an endangered indigenous language represents a legacy no one could have predicted. $3.1 million bought the production, and $44.7 million came back in domestic theatrical gross alone. That 14-to-1 return on investment ranks among the most successful Western productions ever mounted. 1972's box office leaders included The Godfather, The Poseidon Adventure and Deliverance, and Jeremiah Johnson held its own among the top 7 films of that year. Theatrical reissues in 1974 and 1975 pulled in another $25 million in rentals. Roger Greenspun wrote in the New York Times that the film delivered moments of great beauty and terror and deeply earned pathos. Variety praised the superb direction, excellent lensing, and sharp editing after the Cannes premiere. Modern audiences continue responding positively, with a 91% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 75 on Metacritic reflecting sustained appreciation. The Bronze Wrangler from the Western Heritage Awards for Theatrical Motion Picture provided official recognition, while influence spread through countless works that followed. Dances with Wolves and The Revenant carry clear DNA from this film, and the Italian Western comic Ken Parker launched in 1977 with its protagonist directly modeled on Redford's portrayal. 50 Years of Perspective reveals what Jeremiah Johnson really represents. Sidney Pollack described the film's meaning by saying that no matter how hard you try to drop out, there is no escape from obligations to people and things. That theme resonates throughout every frame. The director bet his own house on his vision and won. The star performed his own stunts and endured genuine isolation in the wilderness for the final shot. A blacklisted actor found redemption in the role of Bearclaw, while a technical advisor sparked a language preservation movement that continues bearing fruit today. The source material drew from legends that were mostly fiction, centering on a man whose real name never appeared on screen, buried under a fictional name he never heard in life. A 3-second GIF introduced this film to entirely new generations who had no idea they were looking at one of the great westerns ever made. John Milius reflected on the film's moral code by explaining that Jeremiah Johnson goes through the Indian graveyard and loses his family, gets cast into the winds for the rest of his life. He may be a legend, but he has no place to sleep. Legends don't receive happy endings, they receive legacies. This film's legacy stretches from Cannes to Cody, Wyoming, from the mountains of Utah to the memes of the internet, and that legacy endures. Netflix, Max, and Tubi all carry Jeremiah Johnson for streaming right now, with Tubi offering it free. First-time viewers finally have the chance to discover what they've been missing. Thanks for watching this deep dive into one of cinema's great westerns. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed the journey, and remember something: the next time that nodding GIF crosses your screen, now you know the whole story behind it. Keep your nose in the wind and your eyes along the skyline. We'll see you in the next one.